For those of you who would have seen the program, we have a loose sort of theme running through. Our theme, as you can see, action, devotion, wisdom. This morning's session is loosely based around action. In the afternoon, devotion, and tomorrow, Sunday morning, we've got wisdom. So I thought I'd just share a few words with regards to action from what Swami says. He says people have to be doing some action or the other from moment of waking to the moment of sleeping. That is to say, from birth to death. They cannot sit quietly without doing action. No one can avoid this predicament. So the question then naturally arises, how do we discern between what is good action and what is bad action? And Swami beautifully puts it this way. He says, good thoughts alone will lead to good action. What is the meaning of good action? A good action is that which would please God. Whatever you do, you should always have the feeling that you are doing God's work. And I personally find that to be quite a powerful statement. Whatever you do, you should always have the feeling that you are doing God's work. So whether it's related to your family, whether it's related to your work, not just when we come to Sai activities and we go Thursday vigils or performing service activities. Further, you should never forget to dedicate your actions to God. He who in this manner always lovingly offers his actions to God would get only good thoughts and feelings. Evil thoughts and feelings would never enter his mind. Everyone should realize that all the sorrows and miseries of man are due to his bad thoughts. Every man thinks that someone else is responsible for his troubles. This is not so. You alone are responsible for the good and evil that befalls you. You blame others because of your weakness. I'd now like to call on our next speaker. So I have the privilege of introducing Ashok Sakhrani. Uncle Ashok was born in India, but has spent the majority of his life in Hong Kong. He is a barrister by profession. He had initially completed his bar exams in London before returning to Hong Kong, where he was admitted to the Hong Kong bar and began practicing in April of 1987. He has since developed a specialization in personal injury and medical negligence work. Uncle Ashok has had extensive experience in the Sai organization, serving in a variety of different roles. He has been a Sai Center president and was also the national chair of Hong Kong in 2002. More recently, in 2014, he became central coordinator. In 2016, he was appointed to chair the task force to update the SSIONZ guidelines and operations manual, which are presently in force and are used all over the world. And if you've seen it, it's quite a big book, so it's quite an impressive job. Last year, in February 2018, he was appointed Zone Chair of Zone 5 countries, and in August 2018, he was appointed Chair of the Environmental Sustainable Committee. Uncle Ashok is dedicated to the Sai mission and specifically looks forward to the next 15 years or so, where he endeavors to continue to be of service to Swami. He considers this the greatest privilege of his life. I'd like to call Uncle Ashok, who will be speaking on action, devotion, wisdom, a personal journey to Sai.
Salam. I offer my most humble pranams to beloved Bhagwan. I'd like to thank Murali, Neville for extending the invitation, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming and taking your weekend out. The topic I have is action, devotion, wisdom, a journey inside. And it will very much be a personal journey, and I hope that there are things in the journey that you'll find useful in your own spiritual lives. In 1981, when I was in the last year of secondary school, my father gave me an inducement to come to the Sai organization. And he said to me that if I came to the Sai Center once a week in that last year of secondary school, he would allow me to go to England to read law. Now that took me by surprise because for the whole year before that, he told me I'd have to do my university education in Hong Kong. So this is a total reversal. And that's why I always tell people I came to Swami through a bribe. You like that? Little did I realize that when I said yes to my father, because it was really an offer I could not refuse, I was actually saying yes to Bhagwan because in the 38 years since that time, I have been in that Sai Center in Hong Kong. I know the education I received and the qualification I got as a barrister was a gift from Bhagwan. But more important than that, it's been a huge blessing to be able to use my education to serve Swami from the time I graduated. It is, as you heard, really the greatest privilege of my life. I'd like to use the talk to share some experiences and to share some of the lessons I've learned along the way, and I hope they will help you. I've learned a lot from being involved in the organization. The life of a barrister is actually a life where you shut your door and you just work in the quiet and there's very little interaction. But working in the SI organization really put me out there, having to deal with people in a very real way. I've learned about service and leadership, the joys and pitfalls of both. I've seen the inspiring dedication of his devotees who work and who serve so selflessly. But I've also seen those devotees who allow their egos and their emotions to get the better of them, and who then drift away, and unfortunately that is the real tragedy. Swami said, never leave the organization. It is the unfortunate ones who leave the organization. Do not be unfortunate. And I've seen that up close. But more importantly, it is from my own experiences in the organization that I learned about the best in myself and also the worst in myself, and what I have to do in this journey inside. He confronted me with the demons within me, and he showed me how to come to grips with them. He showed me how to move forward and not backward. I am a little clearer about my values in life because of Mother Sai. I am clearer of who I am and who I want to be because of Swami. And I know I am what I am today only because of Swami. I speak not of my journey to Sai, because that will suggest that there was a period of time when Swami was not in my life. And I know he has always been there, not only in this life, but always. Many of you have heard of the Ted Henry videos on YouTube, and where he interviews a lot of devotees. My favorite interview was with a man called Christian Mose, which was posted in June of 2013. And at that time, he was the assistant professor at Notre Dame University. And as an interview, I would encourage all of you to watch. Christian Mose spoke about his life-changing experiences with Swami and how Swami revealed himself to him. And his insights as he gives that interview really are worth listening to for every sadhaka. But there's one part of that interview where Christian speaks about his first trip to Puttaparthi and attending that first darshan. And he says that when he first saw Swami after the music came on, coming from the ladies' side, he said, and these are his words, it was absolutely unmistakable that his connection to Swami had been for 10,000 years, 10,000 lifetimes, and that there was nothing in Christian Mose's life that could explain that connection. Well, that is exactly how I feel. Swami has always been there, and there is nothing in this life that explains this dedication to serving him. So that brings me to my first lesson for all of you. Your connection to Swami goes back a long time, and that is why you are here today. Use this lifetime to deepen that relationship with Swami, discovering the Sai within you. In truth, that is the only purpose of your birth. Just after New Year's Day in 1993, I had my one and only interview with Bhagwan. And I was very fortunate because there was a group from Korea going to see him, and I was allowed to be part of that group. And he sat on his chair and he was giving his talk, and it was very, very many years ago, as you know. And there's one thing he said, my first lesson from Bhagwan. He spoke about how if you take the number 1 and add zeros behind it, the number gets bigger and bigger as you add more zeros behind the number 1. And then he says, but if you take that 1 away, all those zeros account for nothing. And God is that 1. So that was the first lesson he gave me. After addressing the whole group, he came up to me. Clearly he knew that I had a poster which I wanted him to sign because we were launching in Hong Kong our first teacher training seminar in SSIONZ. And it was the old days where we made everything on A3 paper and we stuck a program on it and we glued on it. And it was something that was rolled up. And he came up to me and he spoke to me as if he never knew me. Where do you come from? What do you do? Are you married? And then he signed that poster. And I don't know what it was, but within seconds, he had this grown man sobbing right in front of him. And that is where everything changed. In February of that year, I became Sai Center President, and my life has never been the same again. I remember that trip was also the first time I saw Swami's sweetness in close proximity. It was a time of that visit when I had that interview, and we came out of the interview room, and it was the old hall, Darshan Hall. It was sand, and there was a Ganesh statue in the middle, and on the sides there was the covered area. And we come out of the interview and we went right to the back in that covered area, and Swami came back out giving his darshan to everyone. And I had 2 packets of vibhuti, which I was told by the center to have Swami bless it if possible. And as he came round, I was extending my hand with the vibhuti on it. And he walked right past. And then he stopped and he came back and he said, "Lawyer, right?" And he blessed the 2 packets and he walked away. So that was the first meaningful trip, and I went back to Hong Kong. But a senior officer in the Sai organization said to me, "You do God's work and God will do your work." And I'll tell you, the last 30 years, Swami has kept to his word in every detail. He has taken care of everything. And so I say to you, never fear to do his work. Never fear to dedicate your lives to him. When I turned 40, I became national chair of the Hong Kong organization, and it was a position I actually held for quite a long time. I never asked for that position, but it was a position given to me. And the transition was a difficult one for a variety of reasons. But I then realized that that transition had to be difficult. And everything I went through was exactly the way it was supposed to be. And I know sometimes when you are in the eye of the storm and things are very difficult, it is actually no fun. And you ask yourself, why am I there? But looking back after many years, I realized that in fact by putting me through that fire, Swami was actually putting some steel in my spine and making me more determined in my service to him. I learned a very valuable lesson, and that is my third lesson to you today. Swami is truly omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Now, I stop for a moment and I acknowledge I have heard that sentence said many, many times. And I acknowledge that when I used to hear it in the beginning, they were nice words, but they didn't really mean very much to me because I never understood it. And I think that's true of many things I heard in the Sai organization when I was younger. You hear so much and it just sort of comes through one ear and it goes out to another ear and very little seems to stay. But as you get more involved, as you dive deep in, as you allow yourself to be put through that fire where you will burn, slowly those teachings start to resonate. Slowly you start to understand all those things you heard. So, the one thing I've learned is Swami actually does orchestrate everything in our lives. But that requires two things from us. First and foremost, it requires that we get our egos out of the way. Secondly, it requires that we give up our attachment to some illusions that we seem to hold very dear to our lives. And the third point is that we have faith in Him, really have faith in Him. But I know this is where the problem really lies. As a barrister, one of the things we're trained to take great pride in is in our mind and our intellect. We have this idea that we are masters of everything and that we can control our futures. But in that process, we seem to hold on to a lot that we are unwilling to let go of. This false sense of self. We tend to hold on to ideas that we get and we just sometimes seem unable to shake them. And so we seem content because it's what we know and what we think gives us security. We seem content to live in the prisons of our minds. But eventually we need to let go of all of that. And Swami, in his great blessing, had me write an article a few years ago for our annual magazine in Hong Kong. And it was on the words neti neti, which as I understand it means nothing. It is said that we cannot positively understand that we are divine. But what we can do is understand what we are not. So, being a barrister is my profession. I'm not a barrister. All these ideas of ourselves that we cling on to, which seem to give us self-worth, is not what we are. And we need to let go in everything. And sometimes the hardest thing to let go of are our own ideas, things we hold on to. The time when I was national chair was also the busiest time of my legal practice. So I actually had 1.5 jobs. I had a very busy legal practice, and Murali will tell you, being national chair is almost like having a part-time job. It is tough. Doing Swami's work is the easy part. Dealing with the people is the hard part. And that's where I really, really struggled. I had a very young family. But the net result of all that was, that 1.5 jobs, is I really had to give up a lot of my friends. We didn't watch TV very much. And I had to give up a lot of family time because I was always in the Sai Center. And I remember my brother was complaining that I spent too much time in the Sai Center. But you go through these experiences, and then years go by and you look backwards, and you learn many, many valuable lessons with that beauty of hindsight. And that brings me to my fourth lesson. The most important things in your life is Swami. And it is not enough to tepidly tip your feet into the shallow end to taste how warm the water is and how safe it is on the shallow end. That's just not good enough. You really need to dive deep into the deep end. Because that, in the deep end, is where His love is. It's in that deep end when you get submersed in His being that you feel the protection and Him as the redemption. And that protection comes in very practical ways, in very meaningful ways when they matter the most. My father had a stroke on the 17th of December 1996. It was the second one, and that was a Tuesday, and we were going to the hospital every day. And on Saturday morning it became very, very clear that his condition had got worse, and the doctor said they'd have to call the anesthetist to intubate him. And as you can imagine, that was a very emotional time for us as we waited for the anesthetist to come. And suddenly, lo and behold, this Indian man is standing in front of me with a white doctor's jacket. And I knew that Indian man because he'd been sitting on the chairs in the side center, quietly sitting through the bhajans. I didn't know him. I'd seen him before, and he used to come for bhajans and he used to leave. And he was a visiting scholar from America. And so when I saw him, I was quite shocked to see him. And he said, he's the anesthetist who had come to intubate my father. And I will tell you that from that Saturday until the following Tuesday when my father passed away, Dr. Suresh held my hand and walked me through the process when we would have to let go. And in the course of those 3 days, Dr. Suresh said to me, when we get these calls to do these intubations, I never go myself. I always send my 2 men. But this time when the call came, I don't know why I came myself. And so that was Swami ensuring that the person I needed to walk me towards my father's passing so that I could accept it, that was Swami taking care. And I can recount hundreds of these incidents where you're just dreading a certain situation, you're praying to Swami, and you have a certain solution in mind and it doesn't come. And then you look back many years later and you say, thank God it didn't come. Thank God it happened the way He willed it. My commitment to serving to Swami has led to greater devotion towards Him. Looking back, it took a very long time, but what was really happening was that stubborn adherence to my own ego, that stubborn adherence to some crazy ideas was slowly being chipped away by His blessings, one at a time. There is, of course, so much more to learn, both about the world and my place in it, and more importantly about my purpose in this life. But I know He is the source of all illumination. I know He is the one to whom I chant the Gayatri Mantra. The fifth lesson, which I'd like to share with you, is that as you witness His divine hands at work in your lives, your devotion grows more and more, and you slowly begin to realize that He actually is the doer of all things. And that realization that He is the doer of all things comes with another realization, that actually you are not the doer of all things. In fact, beyond this realization, you come to realize that Swami is everything. And when I was appointed the head of the Environmental Sustainability Committee, Shruti will tell you, I asked myself why. I'm not an environmentalist. I'm a lawyer, for God's sake. And then you realize that He puts you there and He's got plans for you. And so in a funny, odd sort of way, since that 1 year, I've grown to love the trees. You know, I came earlier, I walked outside for a while, and it's something you all take for granted, but coming from a concrete jungle, I really value. And I went to stand by the fields, and that lush greenness, those mountains, the river at the back, that is Swami. And when I sit for my morning prayers, many times I pray to Him, give me your physical darshan. I actually want to see Him in His physical form. And almost as instantly as a thought comes, you get a sense He's not going to do that. He's not going to show me His physical form. Because what He wants me to see is to see Him everywhere. in the trees, in the mountains. And I know that's a tall order, but ultimately that's the purpose. The purpose is to see him everywhere. And that beautiful form which we love, that yearning to have his physical darshan. There's one video I saw, people put these videos together and they put bhajans on top of it. And there's one scene in that video where Swami's standing outside the Golden Home. And this man comes running to him, collapses on his knees and kisses Swami's feet. And that is what I yearn for. And that's when I pray in the morning, will you come give me your physical darshan? I know what I want to do and kiss his feet. But then I also know that the bigger thing, the greater gift is not that. The greater gift is to see him everywhere. To see Swami everywhere. Dr. Samuel Sandweiss, in his book entitled With Love, Man is God, tells a very interesting incident when he and his family had an interview with Swami. And in the course of that interview, Swami put his hand out like that, his palm up, and he asked everybody what's in the palm. And a brave soul had the courage to say, well, there's nothing, Swami. And Swami then points to the whole room and says, what you see as everything is actually nothing. And what you see as nothing is actually everything. I read his teachings more than I ever did. And I also read the teachings of other great masters. And one of the most beautiful books I read was Swami Chinmayananda's teachings, a book on the Holy Gita. It is without doubt one of the most beautiful books you will ever read. And it took me 2 years to read it. And what a great blessing. He then also introduced me to the teachings of Ramana Maharshi. And I remember going to Sai Towers, and there's this little booklet, 40 pages of Ramana Maharshi looking at me. And I'm not sure why I'm looking at it and why it's looking at me. So you pick up the book and you flip it at the back to see how much it's going to cost me. And it says 50 rupees. And I said, even if I don't read it, 50 rupees is 50 rupees, so I'll buy it. And in those 40 pages, everything you need to know about the truth is there. 40 pages. He has me reading now the book some of you will know, I Am That, by Mr. Gandharva Maharaj. And the effect of all these readings is like a new world opening up to me. It's like a new beginning. The funny thing about new beginnings is people have this thing about their age. They never want to tell you they're turning 50. I will tell you turning 50 was the best point of my life. In my 40s, I was national chair. And you just run and you run and you run and you run and you want to do so many things. And you almost don't have time to stop and think and contemplate. You almost don't have time for your own spirituality. But stepping down and putting me on that path of study, where you actually start reflecting, you actually start thinking about his teachings and what they mean in practical terms, you actually start saying, what do I want for my spiritual life? And you gain a little bit of awareness. You sit and you do your prayers in your silent sitting and you do your meditation. And in that silence, that wisdom slowly comes up to the surface. And so I say to all of you, the great thing about turning 50 is I don't feel as stupid as I was when I was in my 40s. I've learned that we must transform ourselves and to throw off our addiction, and I call it an addiction, to the 6 inner enemies that seem to infest our hearts. And when we are free from those addictions, we are free from the bondages of our minds. And when we are freed from the bondage of our minds, that is where the pursuit of unity and purity can begin to bear fruit. and we prepare ourselves to receive His love and His grace. And that really has been the wonder of turning 50, where you feel more ready, more calm, more still to receive His love. I'd like to end with a daily prayer that Swami wrote in his own hands. And we arrived on Thursday, and Thursday night we were taken to the Mount Gospel Center, and they began by reciting that prayer. And I'd like to share it with you in my sort of understanding of it. O Lord, take my love and let it flow in fullness or devotion to Thee. O Lord, take my hands and let them work incessantly for Thee. O Lord, take my soul and let it be merged in one with Thee. O Lord, take my mind and my thoughts and let them be in tune with Thee. O Lord, take my everything and let me be an instrument of work. I tried to sit and understand what this prayer meant. And in the first line, he speaks of bhakti, or devotion. But that is love for God in all His manifestations in this creation. In the second line, he speaks of seva, or selfless service. But again, that is serving God in all His manifestations in this creation. In the third line, he speaks of the individual jiva merging with the Paramatma, whereby our meditation we experience oneness with all creation. And in the fourth line, he speaks of giving up individual will so that we may live only in God's will. And in the last line, he speaks of that total state of surrender, where we are completely dedicated to the Lord's mission on earth, which has become our mission. In the prayer, we offer everything to God, keeping nothing in the world for ourselves. And so that leads me to the question, do we dare to offer everything to God? Now, at a gathering like this, it's very easy to say, yes, I do. But it's when we go home and when we are challenged by the thought that your daughter is of marriageable age and you desperately wish Swami would get her married, when you may have health issues, when you may have financial issues, it is at those times of challenge that we should ask ourselves, do we really dare give up everything for Swami? Every life is sacred. And this life that we have been given is most sacred because we are devotees of the Purna Avatar. Are we to waste our lives in our petty pursuits? Or are we to awaken to our reality within and discover the bliss that we are seeking not just in this birth, but in hundreds of thousands of births that we have taken, which has culminated in this birth. Being devotees of Bhagavan, are we not to use this life to ensure that when we take our last breath, there are only two thoughts, for me. Thank you for the opportunity, Bhagavan. And lastly, Salam. And I somehow instinctively feel if that's the last thing, the last two thoughts in my life, it has been well spent. Salam.
With that, we will shortly move on to morning tea, but before we do that, I would just like to call all the facilitators for the breakout session following morning tea to come up on stage if you can, please. So following morning tea, we'll be having an interactive session for everyone, and everyone will be breaking out into separate groups, and there will be a few discussions which will be explained a bit later. So again, all the facilitators, if you could please come up on stage so you can introduce yourselves. While they're coming up on stage, I'll just explain, when we go out for morning tea, you'll notice that we came through that main door on the right-hand, to my right-hand side. If all the ladies can go through that right-hand door and be seated on the tables on the right-hand side, the food will all be set up on the right-hand side for ladies. And for men, you'll notice that there's food set up on the left-hand side for all the men. And if you could go through the left-hand door, it would just help with the congestion. So you'll notice they're all being given a number, which we'll be holding up now. And as again I mentioned earlier, that some of you will have your numbers already and some of you won't. You will have received this when you registered. If you don't, please go back to the registration table and you can get a number from there. And you just want to match up your number to the person that's holding up their numbers. For example, if you've got a number of 22, it will be here, first auntie. Can we see all the numbers? Do you guys want to come up front so they can see? Has everyone seen their number, or is anyone still confused? No? Cool. And we'll break for morning tea. Your signal to come back in, we'll have a couple of pigeons. So you'll hear the pigeons and you can start packing up and coming in. Also, after you finish eating, please just leave your tables on the table itself. There will be people who will be clearing up for us, just to save some time. So thank you everyone, and we can start heading out for morning tea now. Thank you.
And question the benefits of this project. So clearly you're not happy that, adding so
I mean, in the interest of time, I can say a few things. I think in the first scenario, what do you do? Obviously, if you don't stop it, so you just straight away without anything.
Like I said, through experience, I've realized that it be unaffected. But how you can try and encourage them to be part of it.
to them, please serve according to how we serve. That is, we say side out.
Action is really to go out and be of service. You can be thinking a lot of time, but suddenly you ring up somebody and says, can you do it? And he says, no, I'm really busy.
And differences, and we are busy, and as you mentioned, like brother, we take time off to go, and if there are enough people to serve, I probably take that as my time, because like I feel busy, and just stand to another person serving, it's while
You serve or whatever way you can, and get involved with other people. Actually, I was thinking,
thing, they find that it is not really needed. So then slowly the numbers. So over here the situation is that the needy people are there, but there is not enough people to serve them.
Just your presence is enough.
Maybe not being attached to the idea of serving food, but just knowing that your presence.
Come across a piece of bread or something. They share it between them. And everyone is just about to eat. And the person comes and asks for